The Sleeping Beauty. The king and queen invited all the most important fairies to the christening of their baby daughter, but they forgot the 13th fairy, and she was very angry indeed. She was so angry that she hid herself behind the curtains in the ballroom where they were having the party and listened. She heard the other fairies, as they stooped over the baby's cradle, say one after the other, "She shall have happiness all her life. She shall marry a handsome prince. She shall be the loveliest princess ever seen. Her hair shall be like spun gold, her teeth like pearls." "Pah!" said the 13th fairy. "What was that?" said the queen. "Nothing, my dear. Go on," said the king graciously to the next fairy in the queue. The 13th fairy kept very still and listened. She was so angry that she lost count, and when she thought all the gifts had been given, out she pounced.
"You forgot me, did you? Well, it will be the worse for you. Beautiful she may be, and good, and all this and that and the other, but my gift will put an end to that. Ha, ha, ha. Listen to me, all of you."
It was so quiet in the ballroom that you could have heard the flutter of a fairy's eyelash. The 13th fairy stood straight and as tall as she could, and waved her magic wand. The baby began to cry, but nobody dared pick her up, or even rock the cradle. Everyone trembled with fear as the 13th fairy, in a loud and awful voice, declared,
"When the princess is 16, she shall die. She shall prick her finger and die at once, and that will be that."
And, with a horrid laugh, the 13th fairy disappeared in a puff of smoke. Of course the party could not go on after that, and everyone turned sadly away. "Wait," said the Lilac Fairy. "I have not yet given my present to the little princess." The king and queen hurried to the Lilac Fairy's side. "It is not within my power to undo the wicked spell, but I can make it easier for you," she said. "The princess, when she pricks her finger, shall fall asleep for 100 years. She may only be awakened by the kiss of a handsome prince." "Thank you," said the queen. "That's better," agreed the king. "I suppose we shall go to sleep at the same time?" "Naturally," said the Lilac Fairy, as she flew back to fairyland with the others. "You know, my dear," said the king, "I think we ought to do something about this ourselves. Fairies are all very well, very good of them to give the child such splendid presents, but this spell—" "But what can we do?" whispered the queen. "Use your common sense, my dear," said the king. "I have thought of a plan. If there are no needles or spindles in the kingdom, the princess cannot possibly prick herself." So the king passed a new law, and after that there was not a spindle, nor a needle, nor a pin to be found anywhere, either in or out of the palace. Or so they thought, but the 13th fairy was too clever for them. She flew back to the palace on the day of the princess's 16th birthday. All the lords and ladies of the court were there, in their finest clothes, and there were several young princes from other countries, all very anxious to marry the young princess, who had grown as lovely and as good as the other fairies had promised. The princess herself was upstairs, fixing a sapphire crown on her golden hair.
"It would be easier if you had a pin," said the 13th fairy over the princess's shoulder.
"Pin? What is that?" asked the princess.
"Oh," said the fairy, "you must know what a pin is like. It is sharp, like a needle, like the needle in a spinning wheel."
"But I have never seen or even heard of a spinning wheel. I shall ask for one for my birthday present." "Will you come with me," said the princess, "and tell my mother just what a spinning wheel is like?"
"No need to trouble the queen," said the 13th fairy. "I have kept one hidden away for you for this very day. Come with me and I will show you." So the wicked fairy led the way, and the young princess followed her,
along passages and up stairs which she had never seen before. At last, at the top of a tall tower, they came to a little door set in the old grey stone. "I must leave you here," said the fairy. "Knock on the door." The princess did as she was told, and at once the door creaked open, and there stood an old woman with silver hair under a snowy cap and bright apple-red cheeks.
"Come in, my dear,"
croaked the old woman, or rather the 13th fairy, for of course it was she. The princess looked around her. The room was full of dust and cobwebs, and there, in the corner, stood something she had never seen before.
"You are looking at my spinning wheel. It is the only one left, I believe,"
croaked the old woman. "Please show me how to use it," said the princess.
"Watch me, and you shall learn,"
said the old woman.
"Now you shall try it yourself,"
she said. "Thank you," said the princess. "It looks quite easy." And she sat down. But no sooner had she taken hold of it than she cried out, "Oh, how silly of me! I've pricked my finger." And the very next second she had fallen asleep, there, all amongst the dust, in her wonderful party dress and her bright little crown. Down in the ballroom the king yawned and said, "It is getting late. Time the dancing began." "But we can't start without," said the queen, and the next instant she was fast asleep. So were all the lords and ladies, the young princes, and all the servants of the palace. They fell asleep just as they were, the cook stirring a pudding, the princess's nurse folding clothes, the footman holding the door for a latecomer. Even the horses in the stables and the flies on the walls fell asleep. Inside the palace it seemed as though time stood still, and slowly and softly, year after year, the thin grey dust settled over everything. But not a single speck of dust settled upon the princess. She remained as lovely as ever, right through 100 years. Outside the palace a hedge of brambles sprang up, so thick and high that no one knew what lay behind it. One day a young prince rode by on a white horse and stopped in amazement. "This is the place I have dreamed of," he cried. "If I can get through this hedge, I shall find the most beautiful princess in the world." The prince took his sword and slashed at the brambles until he had cleared a pathway. "Just like my dream," he said, when he passed the sleeping courtiers, and he wasted no time, but went on until he came to the narrow stairway and the little door in the grey stone. There he found the princess asleep. He stooped over and kissed her, and at once she awoke. "I have waited a long time for you," she said, and they both laughed and ran downstairs to the others. The king rubbed the dust from his eyes. "I fell asleep," he yawned. "Dear me, this is the day you choose your prince," he said, smiling at his daughter. "I have chosen already," said the little princess.